advisor that helped them shape both their strategy and their grant making around water and sanitation work. And before that, he was head of WASH for all of World Vision for the whole world, based up in Seattle. But it was the homecoming of sorts for Braimah to come back to DRI because DRI, at the time Braimah got his PhD at the University of Nevada, Reno, was formally attached to the university. And then they became more independent as a research organization with very, very close relationship to the university. So Braimah's got a very unique background as an educator, researcher, a trainer, and he'll touch again on some of the things he does at DRI. But he's originally from Ghana, so he has the perspective of knowing what it was like to grow up in a small community without sustainable water system in his community. He's got his bachelor's degree at Accra, University of Accra, and University of Ghana in Accra. Then he got his master's from Carleton University in Ottawa, Canada, and then a PhD from the University of Nevada. So that's Braimah, and he'll be speaking first. But I'm going to go ahead and introduce our second speaker, Dale Blackwell, who's been a good friend of Rotary. She's the president of the Nine Power Foundation, which is based in Golden. And that organization is also she's the co-CEO with her brother of the Nine Power Company, which does a lot of wastewater treatment around the world. And again, they do that from Golden. So they work with organizations all over to make sure that they're removing dangerous heavy metals, particulates, things like that from water. But the Nine Power Foundation is the charitable arm of the organization. So in addition to helping her brother run the Nine Power Company, she also runs the Nine Power Foundation. And because she's not the kind of person to let any grass grow under her feet, she also started the Colorado Women's Day, and where it's a wonderful conference, day-long conference that highlights a lot of the contributions of women all over, but especially from Colorado. And again, she's been a wonderful friend and partner with Rotary because we worked with her on the Colorado Women's Day program. She's involved with our district WASH committee, and she supports a number of Rotary WASH projects. So that's Deb and Braimah. I'm going to turn it over to you for that. Thank you for coming to this one.
Steve, thanks for the introduction and inviting us to share our testing. And I want to also thank the participants here as well as those online on Zoom. How many do we have? 8 participants. Okay.
19.
No, the breakout.
Oh,
the breakout.
Are you here? Oh.
Our breakout has 9 here, but it's all there. Yeah. So this will be a tag team. I will go over testing, and mine will be touching on developing countries, what we do in developing countries in terms of testing. As Steve indicated, when you put water infrastructure on the ground, we just heard the first speaker there who was talking about impact. So we need to continuously monitor. And one of the aspects that we look at is testing of water quality in the water systems that we help create with community members. And so I will touch on what we do in developing countries. And so next, who is?
Here we go.
Okay. So I'll look at the problem of water quality in developing countries. And then I'll look at how we do it in developing countries. And then I'll touch a little bit on our projects at the Desert Research Institute that we implement in developing countries. Next, please. So I will begin with the scope of the problem. We have pathogens in water, and pathogens are disease-causing microorganisms in water. We often have that as a big problem when we construct wells or we help community members construct wells. And they come in various forms, from viruses to bacteria, protozoa, and helminths. They are not seen by the rural communities. We here in the US understand what they are, but in developing countries, because of the low level of education and the people that we engage with in the rural community don't know what it is. Once water is clear, they drink it, but we get bacterial contamination through the way we design wells, the way we tap springs, the way we harvest rainwater, and it can be occurring at the source, but then a large portion of it also comes as a result of transporting water from the source to home when there is recontamination, as well as poor storage. So those are the issues that we have with microbial matter, and we need to be analyzing for this. Next, please. So we also have problem with laboratories in developing countries. So we go by what we call indicator organisms to analyze for pathogens. And some of the things that we use at DRI are the color tests, which are positive and negative tests. You know, some of you who are in water testing and microbiology knows that we have several microorganisms, millions of them, and it's difficult to analyze them individually. So we usually would test for total coliform, fecal coliform, and E. coli. Especially for E. coli, it's usually an indication of human contamination. And once you have human contamination, then there's a high likelihood that you have pathogens in the water. So we do this as an indicator test. It's just a positive and negative test. We don't have the resources in developing countries. So it is either the microorganism is present or absent. So these are some of the tests that we do in the field. Next slide, please. So that's about bacteria or microorganisms. We also will have to analyze for chemicals. And two of the ones that we want to talk about here are fluoride and arsenic. We have, lead and cadmium, and there are so many of heavy metals that you can analyze in the lab. But in the field, we have also begun to use field-based tests for arsenic. And we know that fluoride is a very big issue. We add it to water here in the US, to our water systems, for better teeth and bone development. But in developing countries, some of the places is naturally occurring underground. So when you drill a well and there's high fluoride, then, people who drink it can get what we call dental or skeletal fluorosis. There's mottling of the teeth, and sometimes you can have bow-legged children as a result of high fluoride. So we need to take fluoride out of it, and that we need to test the water to know what the level is. There are about 200 million people globally who suffer from fluoride toxicity. Next to arsenic poisoning is fluoride globally. But it's a little easier to remove arsenic than fluoride. So we still are battling with that. But I'll come to one of the slides that what DRI is doing in this area. Next slide, please. So in developing countries, we have a problem with labs. They are not there. Even if they are there, they are in the capital cities. And there's a problem with supplies of reagents and all that. And then there's also lack of the technicians to be able to, this is a highly skilled area, to be able to analyze for both microorganisms and then also chemicals. And then there's also lack of monitoring. And then the awareness that water is clear and probably is safe. It doesn't mean that when water is clean, it's safe. So these are the issues that we have in developing countries. Next slide, please. I've already talked about, some of the test kits that we used. The color test was developed out of the University of San Francisco, and then it was promoted by the UN many years ago. So we still use that. We use it. It's what we call incubation. Is done by ambient temperature, so you don't need an incubator to be able to grow the organisms, so the microorganisms. So we are able to use that. These are the vials that we use. And when you put water in there, it is very clear. We don't have a pointer here. It's very clear. When it turns yellow, means that we have coliform in it. Right? Coliform in it. Now you use a UV light to shine on this, and when it fluoresces, then you know that there's E. coli in it. Very simple. We don't know the amount of it in terms of colors, but you are able to tell in the pill that there's E. coli in that water. I will go to the WHO limits, but for E. coli and coliform, it's supposed to be 0 in water. So if the moment you have E. coli in there, then the water is not safe for the communities to drink. But it's a lot of argument around that, whether if you have low levels of E. coli, should community members drink it or use it for other purposes than to go and drink surface water. So this is another argument that we cannot get into. In terms of physical and chemical properties, physical being the pH, electrical conductivity, total dissolved solids, temperature, color, stability. We also can analyze all this with field test kits. And then for nitrate, fluoride, ion, chlorine, total and free chlorine, as well as arsenic, we have very simple test kits that we use to test water in the field. Next slide, please. So I mentioned the mode of contamination can be from the source. It can be from transportation of water from the source to the home, and then storage can be a problem when the community members don't know how to store the water. So it's not just about the technical part of it, but also as development workers, Rotarians, we're talking about water, sanitation, hygiene. And hygiene part is the awareness creation, the behavior change. And that has to also be done so that community members don't recontaminate their water sources. Next slide, please. So I've talked about this already, the hygienic practices. Some of our projects, we do that so that community members don't recontaminate their water sources. And next slide, please. So this is a photo that is showing some of the tests. You need to involve the community members so that they are able to do it. It's not so technical to take water samples to a lab, but if the community members and the women, we know that the women are the ones that are most important as far as water, in the household is concerned. So this is a typical place in Burkina Faso by some of my colleagues who were showing women how to do these simple tests. If they see it, then they'll know it, and then they can take care of the testing. Next slide, please. And one of the programs that DRI has helped out, the Desert Research Institute, that's where, and I have two of my colleagues here, that's where we work. We are based in Reno, Nevada, and Las Vegas. We are an environmental research institute, about 450 research scientists and staff, and we work globally. So the program that we work on, as long as my friend Steve Warner, who helps us a lot, is the Center for International Water and Sustainability. Our history at DRI has been that we help World Vision to create a state-of-the-art water quality lab in northern Ghana. We still send our students there. That's a big lab that we cannot get in every community. So organizations bring their samples to that lab to analyze. We also have government labs in Ghana, but what led us to helping World Vision was that the in-country labs in Ghana weren't providing good analysis, good results. So we've helped that. That is a photo actually of some of our students that DRI we train. We still take them back to Northern Ghana to do some lab work. We currently work in Northern Malawi in the Rumfi district with Transform International. And then our local partner is DAMRA. DRI has provided the training for all these simple test kits, and our circuit riders are using them. But we are also talking with the district health authorities as well as the partners there to see if we can help them create a mid-size, mid-level laboratory so that they can do some analysis. Next slide, please. So in our work too, we try to explain what the water quality guidelines are, what the limits are to the people that we work with. Next slide, please. So these are some of the guidelines. The World Health Organization develops what we call water quality guidelines, and then the countries use them to create their water quality standards. So we make sure that we also help our partners in the field to understand some of these numbers and then also point them to their local standards. So the WHO standards are normally developed for health reasons and aesthetic reasons. Aesthetic means that maybe it doesn't have health concern, but because it's high in name, community members may not drink it, or it has other effects, physical effects. So for example, iron, if it is high in water, reasonable high, it will not have any health effect. But maybe it can stain clothing, or it can turn food to brown or reddish. And that could be a problem. So this is how the WHO sets it up. But most of countries cannot develop their own standards because it's a highly technical area. So they end up using the WHO guidelines as their standard. Next slide, please. So again, with our programs at DRI, we all incorporate this training into what we call our circuit rider program. Our circuit rider program, we train a group of technicians who go around in the circle of water systems regularly to check that the water systems are operating with the communities. This is another presentation that we can make, and Victoria needs some of those programs on our team. But we provide that training to those circuit riders so that they can help the community members. So all the things that I talked about the field testing and all that, we provide that to the circuit riders. And this is the schematic of the circuit riders. They go around from community A, B, C, D, E. The advantage of circuit riding is that you don't wait until the system is broken down. But they go around and then with the communities, and if there's a small problem coming up, they'll catch it before it becomes very big. Next slide, please. So we have this program in Ghana, Malawi, Honduras. We did one in Chile, which was a short program, but we folded up there. As I mentioned, we already provide that training. These are some of our circuit riders in Ghana, and we supply them with the test kits, and they are able to do that. Next slide, please. Next slide. So these are some of the household water treatment systems. I'm sure a lot of you know about ceramic filtration, and some of these things are also supplied at the household level to take out microbes, microbial matter. Next slide, please. One of the things that DRI has done over the years, maybe the last 20 years, is looking at local materials to be able to take arsenic and iron out of water. We've been successful in doing that using laterite, and laterite is an iron aluminum oxide, and it takes iron and arsenic through a process called adsorption. We've been able to do that. We've also, with New Mexico Tech, that we developed that technology. One of the things that we've also done in the past is to use a different variation of laterite, which is bauxite, and bauxite is also iron aluminum oxide. It's just that the aluminum content is higher than iron. We've experimented this to remove fluoride, but fluoride loves water. It doesn't want to leave water, so it's difficult to treat fluoride. Now we are getting into another research, which Palista on our team is leading that research, using electricity and moringa. How many of you know moringa? Moringa? Yes. So moringa is already used in treating water for microbial matter. It's a coagulant, and with that property, with electricity, we are trying to see if we can take fluoride out of water. Currently, at the lab scale, here studies in the lab, we are able to remove fluoride 90%, but that's still at a small scale. We are not trying to pilot that. If we are successful, this will be very good because in the rural areas, moringa is very easy to get and it will be cost effective. Next slide, please. So that is my presentation. I don't know if I've gone beyond 15 minutes, but I don't know whether we take questions now or Deb makes a presentation before we take questions together. Yeah, moderator, what do we do?
Well, I think if there's a burning question, let's take it now. Otherwise, let's let Deb talk and then do questions together.
And then our presentations overlap a little bit, so it's better she just works there. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Braimah. That was a great presentation, set up what